this is Carla and welcome back to the studio, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Step It Up Saturday. For this episode, we'll be featuring the Gorgeously Made bundle using the stamp set along with its coordinating dies. So for our first card, we're going to start off with a piece of 11 by 4¼ inch piece of Sweet Sorbet cardstock, and we have it scored at 5.5. I have a piece of Very Burst cardstock measuring 5 3/8 by 4 1/8. I also have a piece of the Masterfully Made DSP 5 1/4 inch by 4. And then I also have a scrap of Pretty Peacock and Crushed Curry cardstock. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to fold my card base in half. And I'm going to go ahead and burnish that. Set that aside. And then I'm going to bring in my Very Burst cardstock and my DSP, and I'm going to go ahead and adhere that down to my cardstock. Just a little small border of the Very Burst. And then I am going to bring in some white twine, and I'm going to kind of do a little bit of a double bow. I'm going to cut myself a decent sized piece here. I'm going to create a bow kind of like over on this side. We're not going to have any tails on this bow. I'm just going to create my little bow. And I'm going to just make our loops a little bit bigger. Like so. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to wrap this around and tape it down. I'm going to bring in my tape. I'm just going to straighten my twine a little bit, kind of fold it back behind. Like so. A little piece of tape. Put that down like so. And then on my other side, I'll kind of straighten those out. I'm going to wrap that around and make that look a little bit even, or straight actually. Okay, I'm going to flip this over. Let's move that out of the way. I'm going to kind of hold that taut and add another piece of tape. And then we're going to trim off this excess. Okay. Kind of fix our bow, got a little twisted. Okay. And then for these pieces right here, I'm going to use the thank you stamp and Very Burst ink. And I'm going to stamp the thank you right in the middle. There we go. This is our really simple card. Then I'm going to bring in our current double oval punch. And for the scallop, I'm going to punch out a piece of the pretty peacock. And then for our greeting, I'm going to kind of line that up in my punch. Try and get it straight. Okay, so we're done with that. And then let's go ahead and adhere this piece onto a pretty peacock. If the video seems like it's shaking, I apologize. The table I'm working on seems like it's very sensitive. Okay, so for this piece, we're going to bring in some dimensionals. And we're going to pop this up. Okay. And then for this piece here, we're going to pop this up as well onto our card base. Okay, looks like we got them all. And then I'm going to place that on my card base. And for this, there's a very, very small border as well. Okay. Then we're going to add our greeting piece down here. Make sure it's straight. Like so. And then I'm going to bring in my adhesive back sequins trio. This is actually part of the suite. The DSP, the stamps, the dies, and these embellishments are all part of the I believe it's Masterfully Made suite. And then I'm going to add a few of these sequins. Let's see. Put one like right here. Add a smaller one up here. And then another one, and we'll place it right over here. Okay, so that's our first simple card. On to our next. Okay, for my second card, our card is going to be folded the same as our first, a little bit different than what we usually do. So I have a piece of very burst cardstock. It's cut at 11 inches by 4 1/4, and it's scored at 5 1/2. I have a piece of Masterfully Made DSP, 5 1/4 by 4 inches. I have a scrap piece of Azure Afternoon cardstock and a scrap of crushed curry cardstock. Then I have a piece of Vellum, 3 1/2 by 3 1/2, and then a scrap of basic white. So I'm first going to go ahead and fold and burnish my card base. Okay, put that aside. Put that aside. Then I'm going to come in and I'm going to stamp on my DSP. So I'm going to bring in my Berry Burst ink. And I'm going to use this this image here out of the stamp set. I'm going to ink that up. I'm going to stamp off, and then I'm going to just add some decorative element on that, and then I'm going to come down to the bottom of it and do the same thing. Stamp off, and then just add like so. Okay, we'll put that aside. And we'll close up this ink. We're done with this color. And then, let's see, so our vellum, we're going to be die cutting that. And I'll be using the larger circle from the Stylish Shapes dies. So put that aside. That's for our die cutting. Then for our Azure Afternoon and our Crushed Curry, I will be using this die and this die right here to cut those out. Actually, I'm going to stamp on those first. And then this will be for our greeting, which I'll use this die for. So let me go ahead and stamp on here. So I'm going to use that same decorative stamp. This time I'm going to bring in Lost Lagoon. I'm using all the colors that are in this pattern of DSP. So I'm going to ink this up. I'm going to stamp off, and then I'm just going to stamp randomly on here, like so. Okay. And then for this one, let me bring in, let's see, we got another decorative piece to this. I'm going to use this one. Let me get a block. Okay. We're going to bring in a Crushed Curry ink. And I'm just going to randomly stamp on here. I'll be die cutting that image out, so this doesn't have to be perfect. It's just going to add a little bit of dimension to our die cut. Okay, close this up, and then I'm going to bring in my Azure Afternoon ink. Go ahead and clean my stamp. And then I'm going to do the same thing with this piece. Put that aside. Close this up. And then for this piece here for my greeting, I'm going to bring in Pretty Peacock. And I'm going to stamp this. It says, "You're a great friend." And I'm going to stamp this right in the middle. Okay. It doesn't have to be perfectly straight because we'll be die cutting that out. Okay, so let me go ahead and bring in my machine and we'll get this all cut out. Okay, so here we got our pieces. So I am going to take my DSP and I'm going to adhere that to my card base. Oops, so. Okay, and then for my vellum piece, I am only going to add a little tiny bit of adhesive to that because the adhesive will show through the vellum. So that most of it will be all covered up, so you really won't see it. So I'm going to place that right there. And then I'm going to bring in my liquid glue. And I'm just going to go ahead and add a little bit of glue on here. Actually, what I want to do, I want to snip off the stem piece on both of these. So that way they don't stick out on the bottom. Okay, so bring in my glue. And I'm just going to put a couple little random spots where I'm going to put it on there. I don't need to do the whole thing, just enough to hold it down. Okay, put this over. I'm just going to lay this down right here. Press that down a little bit. Okay. And then for this piece, we're going to do the same thing, just add a couple little spots glue. And we're going to lay this, some glue on. We're going to lay this right over it. Okay. And then for our greeting, we're going to bring in our dimensionals, and we can use the edges on this. You can, even though you use the actual dimensionals themselves, there's nothing wrong with the edge pieces. They're great for things like this when you got like a long banner, or use them on the back of your a layer to your card base. And then we're going to put this right over here. And then I'm going to bring in my twine, and this time I'm just going to make a little bow. And I got glue on my fingers so they're a little sticky. Okay. Then we're going to snip this, like so. And then we're going to bring in blue dot. And place that right above our greeting. Remove the backing. And add our bow. Right there. Make that a little bit smaller, like so. And then we're going to bring in our embellishments. And we're going to add a few of these. We're going to use our white ones. Let's see. Take one of these bigger ones. And we'll place that down here. And then put a smaller one in here. And we'll take another larger one and put it up here. Okay, so that's card number 2. On to card number 3. Okay, for our third card, we have an 8.5 by 5.5 inch piece of Night of Navy cardstock scored at 4 1/4 inches. I have a piece of pretty Peacock cardstock that measures 4 3/4 by 3.5. I have a scrap of Melon Mambo cardstock and a scrap of pumpkin pie cardstock. I have a 3 by 3 inch Vellum and a 4 1/4 by 2 3/4 inch Masterfully Made DSP. And then I just have a 1/2 inch scrap of basic white. So we're going to start by folding our card base and burnishing that. Okay, put that aside. For our pretty peacock layer, I will be running that through with this embossing folder. This is the Time Worn Type 3D embossing folder. We'll do that along with our die cutting in a bit. For our Melon Mambo and our pumpkin pie, I am going to bring in, let's see, I'm going to bring in this stamp again. Get my block. Actually, no, this wasn't the one that we're going to use. This wasn't the one. We want that other long pattern one that we used before. We're going to use this one. And I'm going to bring in my Melon Mambo ink. Bring in my scrap paper again. And I'm going to go ahead and ink this up. And I'm just going to kind of do the same thing. I'm just going to randomly stamp this. This is just going to add a little bit of dimension on our die cut pieces. So this is definitely not something you have to be perfect, and it's got to be all straight. Let's do one more up near the top just in case. Whoops, I didn't need to do that. Okay, so we'll set that aside and we'll close this up. And then we'll bring in our pumpkin pie ink. Let me clean off this stamp really quick. Okay, and then we're going to do the same thing with this piece. Get up. And again, I apologize if the camera's shaking. The table that I'm working on is a little shaky. And one more turn right down here. Okay. We'll close up our ink. And then both of those pieces will be die cut with this die. So we'll set that aside. Then for this piece of designer series paper, I'm going to use this die and I'm going to cut it like this so it looks like a torn edge of from a spiral ring notebook. And then this die right here I'm going to do along the bottom to give it kind of like a torn edge. So we'll go ahead and die cut that with that stuff. And then for my vellum, I'm going to be using the Stylish Shapes dies again, but this is the smaller circle. So that'll be die cut. So for my strip, I'm gonna go ahead and stamp my hello greeting, and I'm gonna do that in lemon lime twist ink. And let's see, ink it up. And I'm gonna stamp it right here and hope it's straight. Stamp that again. That's a little bit better. Put that aside, and then I'm going to bring in my little mini trimmer. And I'm going to go ahead and just trim this out. This is just going to be a little small piece. Try to line it up. So, okay, we'll put that aside. Okay, so now we're to the part where we're going to do some die cutting and embossing. Okay, so let's go ahead and assemble our card. So I'm going to take my pretty Peacock emboss layer, and I'm going to put that, center that on my Night and Navy cardstock. And then my DSP piece, I'm going to add a little bit of adhesive onto that. I'm going to place that like off to the side here. Okay. And then for our our die cut vellum circle, I'm going to place that right about here. And then for my die cut pieces, I'm going to bring in my glue. And I'm just going to add a little bit, a couple of dots and some spots just to hold it down. I think that should be good. I'm going to kind of lay that right here. Like so. We're going to do the same thing with our pumpkin pie piece. I'm going to kind of lay that right here. Okay, and then for our little greeting, come in with a little piece of, let's see how big, a piece of dimensional on the back of this. And we're going to put that right here, like so. And then I'm going to bring in my white twine, and I'm going to create a double bow. Like so. I'm going to trim this. So. And one of the things I like to do is come in with my bone folder and just on the end, just slightly curl a little tails. I'm going to bring in my glue dots, and I'm going to add it right to the base here of little sprigs. Remove my backing, add my bow, and then I'm going to come in with my embellishments. I might take your pick tool, and this time I'm going to use the pretty peacock sequins. I'm going to add one right here. And let's see, another one down here, and then the smaller one right up here. Okay, so that's our third card. Let me go ahead and bring in our other two. So this was our first simple card. Then we stepped it up just a little bit with this one. And then here is our third one, our wow card. So I thank you for joining me today for Step It Up Saturday. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. I'll be back again next Saturday with another Step It Up Saturday. So thank you so much for joining me. You all have a great day. Bye-bye.